Now, we're going to walk through a trouble ticket. We'll go ahead and just work with it as if we've got a couple people who are working on the same ticket. I have 3 people in the group that can see these files. I'm logged in to show off the webinar, and these are only the files that I'm letting you see. But I've got 2 other people who can log into this group and go ahead and see the same files. But not everybody else. That would be the key phrase. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I want to start with this one with DNS and Slack, because our trouble ticket starts off with, hey, they're complaining that Slack is slow. And the question is it us or is it them? Let's find out. So I already have the file that I'm interested in open for us. And what I want to start off first is I want to look at that big picture. I don't want to like sift through 2 million packets and look at every single one. Ick, right? So I'm going to go ahead and come on over here to my analysis tools, and I'm going to start with Zeek. So for me personally, when I'm looking at large files from customers, again, I don't want to look at every single thing. And using Zeek within CloudShark makes it so that I don't have to download the file and then, run it, inside Zeek and install Zeek, which quite frankly, I haven't quite got to work in Mac yet. So I have to then go into a VMware where I've got Kali and it's already there. Whew, very involved. So now I can just go right straightforward in my CloudShark. So the CloudShark Enterprise hosted. And so I don't have an appliance. I have one out in the cloud. I've got CloudShark in the cloud. And I let my customers go ahead and upload their files for me. And then I can go ahead and look at them and then go walk through the answers with them too. So I just use Zeek first. And I'm going to start with DNS because you always start with DNS. Because if DNS is slow, everything's slow. So let's look at DNS. I'm going to come over to my all DNS queries. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to focus on the response time. So I need to add a column here. I've got so far queries and counts. That's just the default for Zeek. So I'm going to customize my columns a little bit. And I'm going to add round trip time. Get in there. Click, click. Get in there. Why are you not responding? There we go. Oh, I had to be just in the right spot. There we go. And then I also want query type name. Is this an A record for IP4? Is it a quad A record for IP6? Is it some type of server record, SRV record? I like to see my record names. So tell it to close. And now I've got all my different, record types. I have my counts, and then I've got my IRTT. Excuse me, IRTT is for TCP. I always mess that up. So my RTT, round trip time. And I'm going to just sort it. There we go. My fingers are a little sticky today. And sort it once, and then sort it again. Oh my gracious. We've got 3-second response times for some of these. Now, here's where you have to remember, just because it's interesting doesn't mean it's relevant. So remember, they're complaining about our Slack workspace. So I'm not going to look at those, even though they would be fun to. But I want to go ahead and look for the ones that are for our workspace. So I'll just do a little search here for SEC, CDC, and operations. There we go. Hit enter on that. So now I have just those queries that are relevant to my workspace. And I want you to notice, sure enough, there's one in there. It's over a second. Okay. And, I don't know if the issue is my DNS server or is the issue my server had to go out and do recursion and ask other servers, and that was slow. Or maybe this was an error coming back, and oftentimes I can say yes really fast, but no, I kind of want to cushion the blow. It takes me a while to figure out, what reply code I'm going to send, right? So anytime there's an error in any upper layer protocol, it's not that uncommon for it to take a bit longer, but this is like forever, right? So now I know I do have some DNS issues for response time. And what I want to do is, now that I know that, I want to filter my DNS file, right? My DNS and Slack file, my big file. I want to filter for here. Let me go ahead and flip it over. There we go. So you can see my filter. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put that into the chat just so that you can see it better. So I'll copy that and then just pop it into the chat for Zoom here. Stand by. Takes me a second. There we go. All right. Now, just because I put that in the chat, don't think that I'm looking at the chat. Okay. Now, that's Jason's job. So let's walk through the syntax for this. I don't know how familiar any of y'all are with Wireshark, so I'm going to assume that you've never seen a filter like this before. So my first part is I want to filter for DNS. Well, right now, the profile I was using to go ahead and pull up, from any new file that I add, I'm using what I call that quick load for. Well, which I'll show you in just one second. And so I want to go ahead, and I can't use the word DNS because I'm not dissecting anything above layer 4 for the profile I'm currently using. So I say you got to be 53 and your, and then look in the whole frame. And then this one is matches. The little tilde means matches. And that is Perl compatible regular expressions. So if you've ever used regex for Splunk or Nmap or Suricata or PowerShell, it's the same type of syntax. And I'm looking for the name of our DNS query. And then I have or IP adder. Okay, and I've got that all in round brackets because that's the DNS I'm looking for. Then I have IP adder. And so what that means is I'm interested in an IP4 address, but I'm interested in bidirectional, whether it's a source or a destination, I don't care, right? And then I say in. Now this one up here, I said equals, but down here I said in for the operator. And what that means is I'm about to do a membership list. And so all of these IP addresses are in that membership list. Okay, now let me go ahead, copy that. There we go. And this one, yeah, there we go. That's the one. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste it. There we go. And go ahead and hit apply. Now that's going to take a second to go ahead and apply. While we're there, let's go ahead and look at the profiles that I have set and given to CloudShark. And I'll come up into preferences and come down to profiles. Now, the ones here that say provided by CloudShark, these are the ones that I use. And so I've got Betty's defaults. Those are just things where I always add the same columns. I have a certain color rule set that I use for most of my profiles. I have filters that I usually use. And what I normally do is take that profile, and all a profile is I select as a set of, basically just text files, flat files. And that means I can use them here on my Mac. You can use them in Windows if you like. You can use them in Linux if you like. You can use them on your Mac. You don't have to worry about that part because they're all flat files and they're all interchangeable. So those profiles are just a collection of text files that make your CloudShark look the way it does, and more importantly, dissect the way that it does. And so I have the ones that, I like to use by default. The one that I have, see how the star is right there? So the one that I have, that star, that's the one that when I upload a new file back here in my file list, when I upload a new file, it's going to default profile to my quick load 4. And then in my quick load 4, That one, the goal is to just go as fast as I can. So I have almost all the dissectors off, so it loads faster. And what I've left in here, let me go ahead and bring this up. There we go. Oops, there we go. So what I have left up is I've turned all the options for those protocols off. So it's not just, hey, we didn't have to load all those dissectors, but the ones that we did, we turned off all the options. So it'll load faster. And that's how I got that 2.4 gig file to just open. All right. And then I have one for Quick Load 7, and that's just like Quick Load 4, only it has layer 7 dissectors. So that's why I couldn't go ahead and just say in my filter DNS, because that would work in Quick Load 7, but it wouldn't work in Quick Load 4. All right. So what we'll do once we've got our filter gone, and it's already finished, I've got the tab open, then we can decide which one of these profiles we want to use. All right, so let me go to the one where, there we go. And that's the one where it's already applied. Okay. Oh, and now that I have the filter applied, right, I just want you to see that I've got the filter in here. And so the whole thing goes, kind of down. It's almost like it had to do word wrap, but it's not doing word wrap, right? And now that I've got it all applied, I don't want to deal with that whole file. So I'm going to export that to a new session. So create new session, and I'm just going to call it, I always like to use the file stem as my export name. And then that way I'll have my main file, the big file. And then each thing that I filter out or export new session out for will be specific. And I'll put in that, the type of filter I'm doing as an additional part of the file stem. So I'm still going to call it DNS Slack. Oops, and I need my keyboard in the right spot. There we go. I'm just going to go ahead and call it DNS and Slack. There we are. And then we filtered for, just the IPs, IPs that matter. There we go. And I'll tell it to export. Now, while that's extracting, I already have one ready for you, so we don't have to look at the whole thing. And here's where I can kind of show you my coloring rule system. Okay, so for me, that was the wrong thing to do. So for me, normally for me, my coloring rule system is red means troubleshooting. It's a troubleshooting problem. It's a retransmission. It's a Windows 0 in TCP, any of the bad stuff in TCP, any of the bad stuff at layer 3, any of the bad stuff at layer 7. For me personally, those are red. And I use red with a white font because that contrast is easy for me personally to see. That's just the way I like it. All right. And then I use this butter color up here for the sins. In fact, once I scroll over here, so here's your normal, packet number, right, type of layout and info that you're used to seeing. And then let me scroll over to my color rule name. There we go. And in the butter color, I use that for, you should notice it, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. All right. In fact, that's what that little N dash stands for. Notice this, or note to self, however you want to look at it. And then for the ones that, don't necessarily have anything bad in them, no troubleshooting things and no notice things, well, then I just do it by layer. So if it's going to be TCP, that's layer 4. All my layer 4s are going to be blue. UDP, TCP, I don't care. It's going to be blue. And then for layer 7, so here's some layer 7 for TLS, all my layer 7 protocols are going to be purple. And so I give some thought to this. So they all start with either 4- or 7- or 3-. Of course, the network layer is green because green means go, right? And it's never the network's fault. Thank you for playing. So I have, layer 3 protocols. Those are in green. And CloudShark will just use whatever is the highest layer. Okay. And so if I have a TLS header, then they'll be dissected as TLS. And that way, they're going to be purple if they don't have anything to notice or anything bad. And then let's see. So each layer I use a different color. And then I have notice and I have note to self. And then I also have W dash for weird. And the reason I use a W dash, because for in my security problems is, let's see, Zeke, are you still on there? Nope. Back to capture index. Oh, darn it. And well, here, there you are. There's my Zeek logs. So back in my Zeek logs, they have one that's actually called weird. And those are all the rules that would have been triggered if we'd run this thing through Suricata. And they call it the weird log. And I loved that when I first saw that. And so I use a color rule with, bright orange. I mean, we're talking like, if you're a Tennessee Volunteers fan, it is that orange. All right. I'm not a big football person, but I wanted the brightest orange I could find. And I use that for the weird stuff so that it jumps out at you. That is the goal. Okay. So here, let me go back over here. There we go. Okay. So those are kind of the thoughts behind my color rules. And the nice thing is sometimes I'll use that as a filter, just the coloring rule category, and filter for everything that's troubleshooting. Okay. And so now that we are down to just the IP addresses and the DNS that matters, right? Just the right IPs. Now we're down to 28 meg. That's a lot smaller than 2.4 gig, I think was the file to begin with. And now I'm down to 46,000 packets versus 2 million in some packets. And that's what I want to have. I don't want to have to look at 2 million packets. Nobody wants to look at 2 million packets. But now I've narrowed my scope to be just for the workspace I'm interested in, as opposed to all of Slack. Because for this file, here, let me come back to my file list. For this file, if I hit my info button, okay, so I hit my little I for info, in the comments, the file was taken with an Endace probe. Okay, so, I keep one in my purse, doesn't everybody? And it's a 4 terabyte packet analysis. It's basically a sniffer, right? But it has 4 terabytes of hard drive space. So I can get some seriously big packets, and it'll actually fit in a 19-inch carry-on. And so I actually bring it on site. I put my actual suitcase, I go ahead and check that, but I keep my probe with me, put that in the overhead. And that way, when I go to a customer site, I can actually implement it there. All right. Yeah. This file didn't come from a customer site, right? Because that's, we don't share that type of thing. It actually came from the Southeastern Conference, right? That's the SEC. And then the cybersecurity defense competition. So it's basically a bunch of college kids in teams from different colleges, right? And they're playing blue team. And then a bunch of us grown-ups, we get to play red team and try to attack their networks. And then their job is to protect their network. It's very fun. It goes over 2 days. It's a blast. And that's where these PCAPs came from, because I wanted you to know that I'm not sharing anything that isn't, that's my customer data, of course. But more importantly, everybody knew that their packets were subject to being captured. So everybody knew that no privacy was expected during the entire 2 days. Okay. And so all I did was just pull it. I mined the data off that probe based on time, and then DNS plus the Slack data. Okay. But that was all Slack to any workspace. We wanted to focus on just our workspace. So that's this one. There we go. Excellent. Okay. So now that we've got it down to a manageable amount of data, and I'm in my TCP profile as opposed to, one of my quick load profiles. Because if you try to go ahead and use your TCP profile on that original 2.4 gig data set, you might as well, like go for coffee, maybe stop and, talk to some friends or something at your work, maybe go to lunch, come on back, because of all the things that it's doing in the background that you might not realize that Wireshark does by default. And if I go ahead and use just the regular system default profile. Okay, so that's why I use my profiles. All right, now, so I've got it narrowed down, and what I'm interested in is to go ahead and filter. And oops, here, let me get back over to the left. I want to go ahead and filter, and my filter part just disappeared. That's okay. All right. I already have, I'm glad that I had one ready to go, right? And then this is the one I just did, and it's all loaded up and good. So I'm going to change my profile back to TCP. There we go. And we'll just apply filters from here. There we go. There's my filter bar. Okay, nice. All right. So now it's a smaller set. You saw how quick that profile applied. Now, in my profiles, there are filters. Now, for me personally, I love a good filter. Nobody wants to look at all the data, right? So I have them by layers, of course, of the OSI model, just like I do my color rules. And then down at layer 4, I want to come on down to the TCP. And I have a number of different filters for TCP just based on different things. We're going to check for packet loss in just a second. And then, if we've got any, zero Windows issues, you always want to look for that one. But we're going to start just with the slow response, because remember, that was the complaint. So I'll do a slow. And I want you to notice this tooltip. Here we go. And when I created these filters, I did it in Wireshark. And so you have a chance to put in a syntax for your filter, and then you have a chance to put in comments. So the comments is what here's popping in the tooltip. So the goal, and I'm going to read it to you in very small font, the goal is to see which stream numbers to filter on. Focus on TCP response times greater than half a second. And so that's something that you could tweak depending on what you think is slow. And because actually half a second is really ridiculously slow. I maybe would want to go down to, 300 milliseconds, but you do you. And only from the server ports, because if I have slow response, like big delta times from a client request, I don't care. Because imagine for a moment, you're sitting there in front of Slack and, which is basically just, a fancy messaging app, right? It's like Teams chat or Zoom chat or whatever, but, it has extra stuff, right? So you're sitting there and you're looking through the feed, right? And you see questions that you need to answer. What do? You type them in, right? And then you hit enter, and that posts. That's an upload. Well, if it took you a couple seconds to read and a couple seconds to type, I don't care. That's not my focus. I want to see server response times. I want to see big times where it took the server to send an answer. So I've got it narrowed to just the source ports for server ports. Okay, all right. Now let's see. Hit the slow one. And while that loads up, I've got, it's already done. I got to talk faster. Okay, I can't keep up with the CloudShark. All right, so I have tcp.time_delta. So that was my time in between packets in the same stream. There's your critical part. And it has to be greater than GT. I could do the symbols, but I'll just tell you a secret. All right, I always get my symbols backwards. Always, no matter how many people have tried to help me with that. And so I just use the letters, works just fine. So GT means greater than, GE would be greater than and equal. So almost for all my operators, I use just the English words. Number one, it's easier for me to type, and I think personally it's easier to read. So that's just how I do it. And that the TCP source port, right? So not both port numbers, source and destination, but just the source is in this list. So once again, I take advantage of the whole membership list. That's actually what it's called. And so I have 80, and then the commas mean or, almost like a CSV file, same idea. So 80 or 8080 or 8088 or 443 or 9333 or 8443. So pretty much the ones that, based on my experience, are going to apply to either TLS or HTTP. Okay, so we'll go ahead and, oh yes, we already applied that, and I had to catch up now. And so I can tell which packets are having that high response time. And then if I scroll over a little bit, let's see, there you are. There's my stream numbers. And so this way I can just make a list of which stream numbers, where'd you go? Stream number, there you are. Which stream numbers had the highest delta times. And then I can turn right around and narrow it even further to those streams. But let's look at the whole list of the TCP conversations first before we do that. And so I'm going to go under analysis tools again and come down to protocol conversations. There we go. Because I want to see how much data is in each of these as well. And it gives me a list of all of the IP conversations that are in this PCAP. I can go ahead and come on down to TCP, but then I'm going to get, for 2 IP addresses, I may have multiple TCP conversations. I don't really want that. I kind of want a cumulative data here. So I'm going to leave it at IP, but you notice I can go all the way down. Okay. And then also too, I can get a list for my UDP, same thing. So I'll do IP first. Betty, what were you doing? I clicked on something I didn't want to click on. All right, there we go. So I'll do IP first. But I don't know if you caught me before I realized my mistake, but there were like 500 and something TCP conversations as opposed to the 346 IP conversations. So that tells me that some of those users had more than one conversation going with at least one of their servers. All right. Yeah, so IP layer, it's just IP address to IP address. Yeah, there we go. And what I really want to do is I also want to, in addition to stream numbers, I want to see who my top talkers are and how much data they sent. And that way I can get an idea of, hey, does that kind of line up with which stream IDs have that high response time? So I'm just going to go ahead and sort it by total data. So I sort it once, ascending order, sort it again, oops, sort it again, there we go, descending order. Oh, actually, I think it was already in descending order. Nope, because here's 94. Okay, so I got to get really close into my screen here and try to do it in descending order. There we go. Ugh. My eyes just aren't good enough for my teeny tiny screen. I've got a little MacBook Air with a 13-inch screen. There we go. I'll just scroll on down. So it's hard for me to see, do I want to say, is there the 2 little triangles? Do I want to sort it in ascending in the top triangle or descending the bottom triangle? I just need better glasses. Okay. And so pretty much most of these conversations didn't send a lot of data. You notice my largest conversation is only a meg. So it's not like we're pumping a ton of data through here, but we are getting slow response time. Okay. And then I can also see for, how many, kilobits per second or megabits per second or bytes per second, bits per second I'm sending through for each of those conversations. But yeah, it's not a scenario where anybody like uploaded a file via Slack. I don't know if you know, but like here in Zoom, I can actually send up to a 512 megabit file in chat. So I want to, think about how much data you could be sending. So these are all pretty small files. Okay. So back to my filter of just the slow ones, right? And what I can do now is figure out, number one, you notice from my slide bar, it's not very many, right? Oops. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Let me try that again. And I was trying to stay on my slide bar. There we go. So you can tell, I mean, I don't really have very many. Okay. And if I look over into the stream number column, there you are. Let's see if there's any that repeat. Okay, 310 repeats. And 310 is the only one that has, okay, so 310 and 237, I notice repeats. And actually, if I ever want to make sure, I can sort it by stream number, and then that way the ones that are the same will be together. And I think those are the only ones. So 237, 267, and 310. Okay. All right. So this will be why I have all these ready for you, because now I'm going to do a new filter. Okay. And I'm not a very fast typer. So I'm going to use some of my filter that I have already. There we go. Keep my curly brackets. And let's change that to TCP dot stream in, and we're just going to put down those stream IDs. So that was 237. Let's see, 237. Yep, here we go. Comma, and then 267, comma, and then 310. There. Okay, that looks good. All right. And that way I can get the whole stream for just those 3 streams. And I can focus on my high, my red packets, my troubleshooting packets, and tell it to apply. There we go. So my methodology is to get a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller data set, so that I already know I have slow response time on DNS. I may circle back to that later. But I also want to see at the TCP side, do I have slowness? And, can I go ahead and say, well, yeah, it's coming from the server. So the response time is coming from the server. And that way, now I have 2 things to look at to go ahead and do my analysis. And then I can go ahead, have those tabs open, and either share the tabs with the customer, or I can go ahead and remember he uploaded it, or she uploaded it. And therefore, I can keep it all in this part of the group and show just the ones that I want to look at. And they would have, since I have, when I uploaded all of these, I had it set in my preferences when I log in as admin, that for that group, for the show group, everything that I upload will go ahead and be part of that user group. Okay, and I've got me and 2 other people in there. Okay, and that way all 3 of us could, collaborate on that. So I would give to my customer access to that group. Maybe he's got a security person that wants to look at it, wants to look at the weird log. And then I've got, another troubleshooting person that maybe is in charge of the firewall. And then I've got someone like me who's kind of looking at the whole thing. It all depends, but I can go ahead and tag things based on what I think is wrong in each file. And that gives them a little help to figure out which one it is. And, maybe I just want to look at the files that are for a specific trouble ticket. I have a tendency to name my files based on the trouble ticket. And then I realized, Betty, what are you thinking? For heaven's sake, stop renaming your file, use the original file name, and then just add a tag. Okay. And so now I've got a couple tags to work from. And that way, my customer doesn't have to open each individual file that I have filtered down, filtered down, filtered down. He doesn't have to see that process. He just wants to see the end, result, right? And so I would put a tag of, oops, didn't mean to right click on that. I would put a tag of, final result. Okay. And that's what I could show. All right. Okay. Oh, and then this is the coolest part. All right. So just to kind of show off while I'm here, I want to look at one of these server IP addresses just for the joy of it. Okay. So I've got 54.147.59.169. Now, when I first discovered you could do this, I almost had a heart attack. I was so excited. And what you can do is, highlight them all, right? I want to do deep search. And I want to see that IP address in any of these files. So I do my deep search and do my display filter. So IP adder equals, and then put in my IP address, 54.147.59.169. I got a little 10 keypad over here. 169, there we go. Oops, okay, I did that wrong. Missed my dot. See, I can't talk and type at the same time. It just doesn't work. And then I'll do my search. And then I'll know which of those files, of all those files, which one. So, all right, so 2 of them, okay, 3 of them. 3 of them have that IP address in it, but not the others. And so now I have, look at that. That's like 2 gig file, 1.9 meg, well, that's a little one. And then 1.6 gig, half a gig, another one that's 1.2 gig, another one that's almost a gig. And it was finished before I was even done explaining it to you. So that deep search, when you have a list of like 30, 40 files that you've gotten in different places and you've done different things with, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just need to know the ones that do X, then I could do that with a deep search and search multiple files at the same time. It's my favorite thing. So I'm going to stop there because it just doesn't get any better than that. So, Jace, do we have any questions?
Yeah. Now, let me bring up just some of my little things to look into afterwards here. I know I have a few questions. I'm going to use that clip that you just said, by the way. That deep
oh my
search
gosh, the deep search is the best. Oh, it's fabulous. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of explanation as to what's going on behind the scenes here. So Betty's profiles are now available to anybody who's using CloudShark from release 3.12 on. Now, if you are using a system like Betty's where it's CloudShark Enterprise hosted, so we're hosting it for you, that's already upgraded. So you already have that stuff. And if you're using CloudShark Personal, it's already up there. And then if you have your own CloudShark system, then upgrading to 3.12 and you'll get all these profiles. You can learn more about CloudShark if you're not familiar with it on that link right there. And then also a direct link to Betty's classes on packet analysis in her training program. And she's very good, as you can see. So